We moved to Texarkana in 1989. The following January, I wanted to get some pro-life materials for Right to Life Sunday at the church that we had been involved with before we moved here. And I called the Right to Life office listed in the phone book, and I was called back a few days later by Katie McCullough, who was the principal force behind the pregnancy center at that time. And she told me I met with her, and she gave me some pro-life things that I could pass out at church. I asked her about the organization, and she told me they met once a month. The organization was founded by the members of the two Catholic churches here in town. And basically, if you came to the meeting, you could be part of the board of directors.
One day we had a visit from the Texas Right to Life director. She told us that First Choice was the oldest pregnancy center in the state of Texas, and one of the oldest in the United States. One of the oldest, yeah. Immediately after Roe versus Wade decision was decided, they immediately start forming a board at that time and started the Articles of Incorporation and all of that.
That not only helped the people that were considering it, but they also wanted to prevent abortion clinic from coming into town, and they were the voice in the community for the pro-life issue.
The first thing I did was I asked Kim, who was a medical transcriptionist at the time, if she would consider working part-time, raising money, with the idea that she could raise enough money to pay her salary, and then she could quit her day job and become a full-time director.
I didn't know about the financials at the time, but I can tell you I was. When I first came on, I was a volunteer director.
After I got a credible board, we had some direction, and Kim eventually was raising enough money that I told her that I thought she could raise enough to hire herself full-time if she went ahead and quit her job. And so, in a step of faith, she quit her job and started fundraising full-time.
I got involved with First Choice at a community event that Connie and Lisa attended, the director and the co-director at that time. I believe it was around 1997 when I was at the community event, and sometime at the end of 1997, 1998, I started volunteering. There is a myth out there that says it's a blob of tissue, that it's not really a baby. But what we try and educate them on is that the heart starts beating 21 days after conception, 18 to 21 days. It just touched my heart that there was a ministry that cared for women who found themselves in a crisis pregnancy situation, that they weren't shunned, and that they really, really cared about these young women, not just the baby, but the moms as well. The director decided to step down, and I just told the board at that time that I could temporarily step in and help out until they find someone.
The center grew up into basically what it is today through her hard work and dedication. Its original name, and which it was when I joined, was Right to Life of Texarkana. We changed the name to Maranatha Pregnancy Center, which also did not reach the audience we wanted to meet. We thought it would be known by the church community.
No one could say Maranatha. They would say Marantha, Marara, I don't know. And we just had a discussion at one of the board meetings, and I was like, can we think about changing the name of the center? And we just, talked about it. And so we asked the volunteers and the staff if they would help. Well, it wasn't really any staff there, but the volunteers, if they would help come up with a name. We had several names that, they would submit to the board, and we came up with First Choice. I truly believe that was Dr. Poteet's, one of his ideas was First Choice.
They rented office space in a building on Arkansas Boulevard, where it stayed until we bought our current building. It was more than we could afford, and the bank thought so too. The bank was not willing to lend us money for the building without a co-signer. And of the people on the board, I was the only person willing to sign the note, even though the Book of Proverbs warns against this. I thought, if the organization goes bankrupt, I'll just own a building, and I'll have an uncomfortable payment to make for a long time.
I was on the board whenever we moved from Olive Street building to the Main Street building, and that was a major move. Whenever we had the abstinence program and how big that was, and that was very daunting at times, trying to keep all that together.
I never had to make a payment. I was very glad when Christy called me to say they had paid off the note and I didn't have to worry about it anymore. It was paid off ahead of schedule. I don't recall when, but it was shortly after we moved from Texarkana.
Like I said, it was originally formed as Texarkana Right to Life, and we just always kept that name and did a DBA as First Choice Pregnancy Resource Center, or Maranatha, which is what it was before that. And we started having problems actually getting insurance because people did not understand that we were a pregnancy center and not an activist organization, because our name was Right to Life of Texarkana. And so many Right to Life organizations are advocacy organizations. But when it came down to not being able to get, it was directors and officers insurance that was the hard thing to get initially, but we kind of saw the writing on the wall that it would apply to anything and everything. And so we made that change 2022, 2023.
The ministry has grown over the years. It has been just a phenomenal pleasure serving the Lord through watching the center's work, and how many people we've actually touched, how many lives have been changed, and how many babies have been saved, and hearing the different stories of what has transpired from people choosing life. And so it's been a growth process, and it's been a phenomenal ride.
I'll never forget the day that it came down. We kind of knew it was coming because it got leaked. But I had so many phone calls of people wanting to know how they could help. We had multiple people say, do you want me to come down and stand guard and make sure your people are okay? Because there were pregnancy centers that were being violently attacked. We had security teams from churches that were offered to us, and just so many calls saying, we're in your corner, we know this has happened, we're celebrating with you, but what do you need? And then of course we had to do a lot of education, because a lot of people think, oh, no more abortion. First Choice doesn't need any resources now, and that's not the case. Abortion is still very much available to people. It is actually being pushed very hard by some organizations, and so we needed to let people know that it was still an option that people were considering, and that level of panic was still there, because a lot of states in our area, there were time limits and things like that. But it changed things drastically. We also saw a lot more adoption-minded people, which surprised me. I didn't think someone who pre-Dobbs would have been abortion-minded, post-Dobbs would necessarily have been adoption-minded, just because that's a very difficult decision to make, and it's not for everybody. But we had a couple of clients who came in and said, I cannot have this baby, whether it be a rape situation or too many kids or whatever the situation was, but they knew they could not have an abortion, and so they made an adoption plan from the get-go and carried through with it.
I came from a situation that was before Roe v. Wade and before opportunities that were now presented, but I was able to help be a part of a solution that like my birth mother didn't really have. And so seeing how these young ladies and these young men are being able to grow and learn and make choices based on love and fact, and has really impacted me positively, and just giving back to the community and back to what God has done in my life through the choice of adoption. The last thing that transpired while I was actually as the president of the board is the mobile unit. And that was the last thing. Whenever we accomplished that, that's whenever I decided it's time for me to step aside.
It was clearly God's will because the money literally came pouring in. We had, I think, over $70,000 in a 3-day period came in for the mobile unit. And we really didn't even have to push that hard. It was definitely something that was God ordained that we were supposed to have that unit. And then of course it was delivered during COVID, and that wiped out all of our plans to get it started. So I'm grateful that that's now moving forward.
I don't know what the future holds for any of us. I know that God has been faithful and blessed the center by providing for it more than any of it, than me or any of its employees could possibly have hoped for. If the organization remains a Christian in its focus, with the idea of bringing young women and sometimes the fathers and sometimes the babies, pointing them to Jesus so they can have an opportunity to make a real change in their life and to know God.
Now we actually have an endowment, and so the future is bright, and the hope is that in 10 to 15, 20 years, that First Choice just continues to grow and focuses on saving babies and ministering to people at the point of their crisis.
Just the presence of First Choice in the community, letting people know how important it is that God, wants these young women to choose life, for their babies. And the more you're out in the community, the more people will hear about it, and the more those girls' lives will be saved, along with their babies and the dads.
I hope that relationships will always be at the heart of what we do at First Choice. There are some days where it feels like you're just doing pregnancy verifications for people that don't want to learn how to be better moms and don't really want to advance their life and don't want you to be involved in their life beyond that. And that's not why the center's there. That's a service that they perform, but they're there to get to know the girls and the guys that come in, to be a loving face and voice and hug if they need it, to be a source of information, to be a source of encouragement, to tell them that they can do it, because so many of those clients have never been told that. And the number of people who have absolutely nobody in their corner is astounding, and you can make a huge difference just by being civil and kind to the people God brings across your path. That's what I learned at First Choice.
On behalf of the staff, the board, the volunteers, the clients, and the babies, both past and present, we sincerely thank you for the last 50 years. As the newest executive director, and have only been in this position for 6 months, I don't have much to offer for the history of First Choice. However, I hope to be able to contribute to the future. Although we don't know what the future holds, we do know that God is in control of it all, and we are trusting Him for His timing. We decided that in honor of 50 years, we should make a new logo. We hope that this logo is timeless and will seamlessly carry us into the future. We kept a version of the butterfly in it, and the butterfly represents transformation and new life, which is what we hope to accomplish in the lives of the men and women that we serve. The mobile unit is up and going, and we're finding places to serve in the more rural areas in our community. We're hoping to provide care, encouragement, and education for those that aren't able to come to the resources that we have locally. We cannot thank you enough for the support for the past 50 years. Considering the political climate in our country, the fight for life is far from over, and it probably never will be. We need that support now more than ever. Your support enables us to continue to empower women to choose life.